Hey guys, tonight we are going to become an apprentice to a slightly questionable, but very well-meaning, Renaissance physician. We're stepping back to a time when medicine was a curious blend of science, superstition, and a whole lot of confidence. It was a world without germ theory, without anesthetics, and certainly without a digital thermometer. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive this. What with your modern immune system and your quaint attachment to things like, sanitation. But for tonight, we're just visiting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always lovely to know who's listening out there in the quiet of the night. If you feel like it, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing this little global community of sleepy history fans gathering together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not a sharp, biting cold, but a deep, persistent chill that seems to emanate from the very stones of the floor beneath you. It seeps through the thin straw mattress of your cot, through the coarse wool of your blanket, and settles deep in your bones. You are curled on your side, a tight ball of warmth against the pre-dawn air. You've been swimming in that deep, dreamless part of sleep, but something is pulling you gently back to the surface. It isn't a harsh alarm, but a sound, distant and resonant. It's the sound of the Matins bell from the cathedral 2 streets over. A low, sonorous bong that echoes across the sleeping city, calling the monks to their first prayer. For you, it's a far more practical alarm clock. It's the city's way of saying, time to get up. The 16th century waits for no one, and it certainly doesn't have a snooze button. You stretch, a slow, cautious unfurling of limbs. Your back protests a little. The mattress, a canvas sack filled with last year's straw, has a few lumps that seem to have migrated directly under your shoulder blades overnight. You can hear it rustle, a dry, papery sound that is the signature song of your bed. A small price to pay for a roof over your head and an apprenticeship with the esteemed Dr. Albina. You push the heavy blanket aside and sit up, your bare feet meeting the uneven flagstones of the floor. The cold is immediate, a shock that chases away the last wisps of sleep. You stay there for a moment, just sitting on the edge of the cot, letting your eyes adjust to the gloom. Your room is small. Calling it a room feels generous. It's more of an alcove, a space carved out of a larger hallway, just big enough for your cot and a small wooden chest that holds all your worldly possessions. A spare linen tunic, a whetstone for the doctor's knives, and a small, slightly misshapen wooden bird you carved last winter. The walls are rough-hewn stone, patched with plaster that has cracked and crumbled over the years. High above, a single small window is cut into the thick wall. It has no glass. Of course, glass is a luxury reserved for the wealthy and the holy. Instead, a wooden shutter is propped open, letting in a pale, gray light and the faintest scent of damp earth and wood smoke from a neighbor's hearth. The city is beginning to wake up around you. Below your window, you hear the distant, rhythmic clatter of a cart's wooden wheels on cobblestones, and the faint mournful cry of a vendor already hawking his wares. It's a softer soundscape than the one you're used to. A world without engines or sirens, just the gentle organic hum of human life stirring. Historians still wonder just how loud or how quiet these cities truly were. Some accounts describe an inescapable cacophony, while others paint a picture of relative peace. Perhaps it just depended on which street you lived on. Here on this narrow lane, it feels like the world is still holding its breath. You stand and walk to the wooden chest. Your movements are slow, deliberate. You pull out your clothes for the day. A simple, undyed linen undertunic, surprisingly soft from countless washings. A pair of dark wool breeches that are a little scratchy, but warm. You pull them on. The familiar texture's a small comfort in the chilly air. As you dress, You look around your little space. It isn't dirty, not in the way you might imagine. The floor is swept, your blanket is folded, and there's a certain order to the people in this time had their own standards of cleanliness, focused more on sweeping away dust and airing out linens than on sterilizing surfaces. Your mentor, the doctor, is a firm believer in the power of a fresh breeze to chase away bad airs. *A. Quirky detail you've come to appreciate is the way the light catches. The dust motes, dancing in the single shaft of gray light from the window. They swirl and glitter like a tiny, private galaxy. It's in these quiet moments, before the day's real work begins, that you feel the strangeness of this life most keenly. It's a life of profound simplicity and profound complexity, all at once. You pull on a pair of soft leather shoes, worn to the shape of your feet, and tie them with a leather thong. You are ready. Just as you finish, you hear a soft cough from the adjoining room. It's the doctor. He's an early riser, always has been. The sound is followed by the gentle rustle of a page turning. That's your cue. Your duties as his apprentice begin now. You can already smell the faint, alluring scent of his study, a complex perfume of old paper, dried herbs, beeswax, and something else. Something faintly metallic and mysterious. It's the scent of knowledge, of healing, of the strange and wonderful work that awaits you just beyond the door. You take a deep breath, the cold air filling your lungs, and you move toward the heavy oak door that separates your small, simple world from the fascinating, cluttered universe of Dr. Albinus. The day has begun. You push the heavy oak door open. It doesn't swing silently on well-oiled hinges. It protests with a low, dignified groan, the sound of ancient wood complaining about being disturbed so early. The scent you noticed before washes over you, stronger now, a complex and strangely comforting perfume. It's the dry, sweet smell of aging paper and leather bindings from hundreds of books. Underneath that is the sharp, clean scent of dried herbs, lavender, sage, and something bitter, like wormwood hanging in dusty bundles from the ceiling rafters. And beneath it all is the faint, almost imperceptible tang of beeswax from the candles the doctor uses to work late into the night. This is the smell of your new world, the laboratory of a man who dabbles in the very mechanics of life and death. The room is a cavern of organized chaos. Every surface is occupied. Books are the dominant species in this habitat. They are not just confined to the tall, dark wood shelves that line two of the walls. They are stacked in teetering columns on the floor, propped open on chairs, and lying in casual piles on the massive central desk. These are not flimsy paper volumes. They are weighty tomes, bound in dark leather or vellum, their spines embossed with faded gold lettering in Latin, a language you are slowly, painstakingly learning to decipher. You can just make out the names of the masters: Galen, Hippocrates, Avicenna. This is a library of ancient wisdom, the foundational texts upon which all of medicine is built, a fact that is both reassuring and, given their age, slightly concerning. Your gaze drifts to the doctor's desk. It is the epicenter of the room's creative clutter. A large leather-bound diary lies open, the page filled with your mentor's elegant, spidery script. Beside it are 3 goose-quill pens resting in a ceramic pot, their tips stained with black ink, a scattering of notes on small scraps of parchment, a heavy brass astrolabe for calculating planetary positions, and a human skull reel, yellowed with age, that serves as a rather morbid paperweight. The skull stares blankly at the ceiling, a permanent, silent resident of the study. You've never asked where it came from. Some things are better left a mystery. Dr. Albinus is sitting at the desk, his back to you. You can see the gentle slump of his shoulders under a heavy wool robe. He is a man who seems to carry the weight of his books and his patient's worries physically. He doesn't turn as you enter, but a thin, reedy voice cuts through the quiet. "Ah, apprentice. Good. The fire needs tending. There's a chill in the air this morning. He gestures vaguely with one hand towards the small stone hearth in the corner of the room, his eyes never leaving the page of the book he's reading. Asterisk, you nod silently, though he can't see you, and move towards the fireplace. Your footsteps are soft on the wooden floorboards, which are strewn with dried reeds and herbs, meant to sweeten the air and catch the dirt. As you kneel by the hearth, you can see more of the room's treasures. On a series of shelves to your left sits the doctor's collection of medical curiosities. This is your favorite part of the study. There are dozens of glass jars, sealed with wax, containing specimens suspended in murky, yellowish liquid. A coiled viper, a small, pale octopus, and a mandrake root that, if you squint, really does look like a tiny, gnarled man. Next to them are polished stones of various colors, a lump of amber with a fly trapped inside, and, in a special velvet-lined box, the doctor's prized bezoar stone. A bezoar, a calcified mass taken from the stomach of a goat, was considered a priceless antidote to almost any poison. It's one of those quirky, invaluable items that reminds you that medicine here is as much about wonder as it is about science. Asterisk. You carefully add a few small logs to the glowing embers in the hearth. The wood catches quickly, and a small, bright flame begins to dance, casting a warm, flickering light across the room. The warmth feels good on your face and hands. The firelight glints off a set of polished steel and brass instruments laid out neatly on a side table. There are lancets for bloodletting, long-nosed forceps, and a rather terrifying-looking saw for amputations. You've seen them used, and while the doctor is as gentle as he can be, the tools themselves look like they were designed for a medieval dungeon rather than a place of healing. Asterisk. As the fire grows stronger, its light illuminates a large hand-drawn chart on the wall. It's an anatomical drawing of a human body, but it looks odd. The organs are simplified, almost symbolic, and the liver is drawn, especially large, taking up a comical amount of space in the torso. That's because, according to the teachings of Galen, the liver was the source of blood, and one of the most important organs, the very seat of passion. It was the star of the show. Asterisk, you finish with the fire and stand up, brushing the soot from your hands. The doctor is still reading, lost in his world of ancient Greek and Latin. You watch him for a moment, the flickering light playing across his tired face. Historians still debate where the line was drawn. In a mind like the doctor's, did he truly believe the powdered horn of a substance for which he'd once been offered a small fortune could cure the plague? Or was it a comforting story he told the wealthy to justify his fee? Was he a scientist, a mystic, or a very clever showman? You suspect the answer is a little bit of all three. He finally closes his book with a soft thud, the sound echoing in the quiet room. He turns to you, his eyes clear and focused. Right? He says, his voice now crisp and businesslike. Our first task of the morning. Fetch me the diagnostic flask. We have a visitor arriving soon. You move without a word to a tall, narrow cabinet in the corner of the study. This is where the diagnostic tools are kept, away from the dust and the direct light of the window. You open the cabinet door, which also lets out a small, weary sigh, and retrieve the flask. It's a beautiful object, in its own way. It's a matula, a specific type of glass flask with a rounded bottom and a long, wide neck, designed perfectly for its singular, peculiar purpose. The glass is clear, but slightly bubbly, a sign of its handmade origins. It's cool and smooth in your hands. You also take a clean linen cloth to wipe it down, ensuring there are no smudges or specks of dust that could interfere with the doctor's assessment. Asterisk, as you carry it back to the main desk. Dr. Albinus watches you, a thoughtful expression on his face. He's in one of his teaching moods. You can always tell. It's when his eyes get a little distant, as if he's looking at the grand tapestry of medical knowledge rather than just you. Before our patient arrives, he begins, his voice soft but firm. Remind me of the fundamentals. Why do we look to the flask? What are we truly searching for within its contents? Asterisk, you know this lesson well. It's the very foundation of his practice. We are looking for the balance. Master, you reply, your voice a little husky with sleep. The balance of the four humors. Asterisk, precisely. The balance. He leans forward, his enthusiasm for the subject making him seem younger. Forget everything else for a moment. Forget the stars, the poultices, the prayers. At the heart of every living being is a simple, elegant system. Think of the body not as a machine, but as a garden. A garden that requires a perfect equilibrium of four essential liquids. These are the humors. Asterisk, he holds up one finger. First, there is blood. It is born of the air. It is warm and moist, and it gives us our sanguine nature. A person with a healthy abundance of blood is cheerful, optimistic, and sociable. They are the life of the party, the rosy-cheeked friend who laughs easily. Their season is spring, when the world is full of new life. Asterisk, he raises a second finger. Then comes phlegm. It is born of water, cold and moist. It gives us our phlegmatic nature. These are the calm, thoughtful, and dependable souls. They are not quick to anger, nor are they prone to wild fits of joy. They are steady, like a slow-moving river. Their season is winter, a time of quiet rest. Asterisk, you place the clean flask on the corner of his desk as he continues, his voice becoming a gentle, rhythmic lecture. Third, yellow bile, or choler, born of fire. It is warm and dry. This gives us the choleric temperament. These are the ambitious, the leaders, the ones with a fire in their belly. They can be passionate and driven, but in excess can make them quick-tempered and irritable. Their season is the heat of summer. Asterisk, he pauses, looking at the skull on his desk as if it were a former student. And finally, he says, his voice dropping slightly, there is black bile, melancholy, born of the earth. It is cold and dry. This gives us our melancholic nature. These are the poets, the artists, the deep thinkers. They are introspective, sensitive, and often prone to periods of sadness. But from that sadness can come great beauty and wisdom. Their season is autumn, when the world is beautiful, but fading. Asterisk, this is the cornerstone of all medical thought, a theory passed down from the ancient Greeks and refined over 1,000 years. It's a beautifully simple system for explaining the vast complexities of human health and personality. Illness, in this worldview, isn't an invasion of some invisible demon or microbe. It's just a lack of balance. Too much yellow bile might cause a fever and a rash. Too much phlegm could result in a cough or a runny nose. The doctor's job wasn't to kill a disease, but to gently guide the body back to its natural, harmonious state. Asterisk, and how do we correct these imbalances? He quizzes, his eyes twinkling. Asterisk, through diet, master, and sometimes by removing the excess. Asterisk, exactly. He claps his hands together softly. If a patient is too choleric, too hot and dry, we prescribe foods that are cool and moist. A nice salad of cucumbers and lettuce, perhaps some fish. We would never give them red wine or spicy peppers, as that would only add more fire to their system. This is a quirky but essential part of the practice. Every food, every herb, every drink had a humoral property. Cooking was, in a way, a form of preventative medicine. A well-planned dinner could be as effective as any potion from the apothecary. Asterisk, historians still debate the true nature of this belief. Did educated physicians like Dr. Albinus genuinely believe that a person's personality was dictated by 4 specific bodily fluids, or was it a useful metaphor? A framework for classifying symptoms and personalities in an age that lacked the tools to see deeper. Perhaps the truth is that it was both a literal belief and a powerful symbolic system, a way of imposing order on the chaotic and often terrifying reality of human suffering. Asterisk. Just as the doctor is about to elaborate on the melancholic nature of certain poets he has treated, a firm knock echoes from the front door of the house downstairs. The sound is solid, purposeful. Asterisk. Ah, Dr. Albinus says, a small smile playing on his lips. He rises from his chair, his robes swishing around him. Our visitor has arrived. The theory is done for the day. Now, the practice begins. He gestures to the gleaming glass flask on his desk. Bring them and watch closely. The story of our patient's health is about to be told. You follow the doctor out of the study and down a short, dark hallway to the small receiving room where he sees his patients. The air changes here. It's less academic, less scented with old paper and herbs, and more infused with a subtle tension, the faint, lingering aroma of human anxiety. This is a room where fears are confessed and hopes are raised. It's sparsely furnished, with just a few sturdy wooden chairs, a small table, and a single high window that lets in a sliver of the morning sky. The focus is not on comfort, but on consultation. Asterisk. A young woman is already waiting, accompanied by an older, stern-looking man you assume is her father. He is dressed in the fine, dark wool of a prosperous merchant, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. The young woman is pale and listless, her eyes downcast. She sits hunched in her chair, a picture of quiet misery. Her father does all the talking, his voice a low, urgent rumble. He describes her symptoms, a profound lack of energy, a loss of appetite, and a persistent sweetness to her breath. Asterisk. Dr. Albinus listens with a serene, unwavering focus. He nods slowly, his face a mask of compassionate neutrality. He doesn't interrupt. He lets the father pour out all his worries, painting a complete picture of the ailment. This is a key part of his method. A patient, or their family, will often reveal the diagnosis themselves if you just give them the space to speak. When the merchant finally falls silent, the doctor turns his gentle gaze to the young woman. He asks her a few soft questions about her sleep, her mood. She answers in a whisper, her words barely audible. Asterisk. After a few minutes of this gentle inquiry, the doctor straightens up. I have heard what you have to say, he announces calmly. Now, let us see what the body itself has to say. He turns to you and gives a slight nod. This is your cue. Asterisk. You step forward, holding the clean, empty matula. The young woman looks at the flask, then at you, a flicker of understanding in her tired eyes. The doctor explains the process with a practiced, soothing tone. In a few minutes, she returns from a small private antechamber and hands the flask back to you. It is now partially filled with a pale, straw-colored liquid. You handle it with the utmost care, as if it were a chalice filled with a precious elixir, which, in a way, it is. It is the key to the entire consultation. Asterisk. You carry the flask back to the study, the doctor following close behind. The merchant and his daughter are left to wait in the receiving room, their anxious silence broken only by the crackle of the newly tended fire you built earlier. The journey back to the study feels almost ceremonial. The doctor closes the door behind you, creating a private, sacred space for the art of diagnosis. He doesn't rush. He first walks to his bookshelf and pulls down a heavy, well-worn volume. Its pages are filled, not with text, but with a series of beautifully illustrated circles. Asterisk. This is the urine wheel. It's one of the most important and widely accepted diagnostic tools of the era, a fact that would seem utterly bizarre to a modern observer. The wheel is a visual guide, a spectrum of some 20 different colors of urine, arranged in a circle like a painter's palette. Each color, from a clear, watery albos to a dark, foreboding niger, corresponds to a specific humoral imbalance or stage of an illness. There are shades of yellow, red, green, and even blue, each with its own name and meaning. Asterisk. Dr. Albinus places the open book on a small stand near the window. where the morning light is best. Then, he gestures for the flask. You hand it to him, and he holds the matula up to the light, his movements slow and deliberate. He becomes a connoisseur, an expert judging a rare vintage. He squints, tilting the flask this way and that, observing the way the light passes through the liquid. Asterisk first, the color, he murmurs, more to himself than to you. He compares the sample in the flask to the colors on the wheel, his finger hovering over the various shades. Not quite subrifus, closer to yes, a pale but distinct yellow. This suggests a mild choleric disturbance, a little too much heat in the system. Asterisk next. He examines the consistency. He gives the flask a gentle swirl, watching the liquid move. See how it moves, he asks, pointing with his chin. It is not thick or cloudy, no sediment to speak of. This is a good sign. The humors are not cooked. The imbalance is not severe. He brings the flask closer to his face, peering at the surface. He looks for bubbles, for floating particles, for anything that might hint at the specific nature of the internal turmoil. This whole process is called uroscopy, asterisk, and it was considered the pinnacle of non-invasive diagnosis for centuries. Physicians wrote entire encyclopedias on the subject, detailing every possible variation in color, density, and even smell. There were charts that linked specific areas of the flask to different organs of the body, the top representing the head, the middle, the torso, and the bottom, the lower extremities. A cloudiness at the very top of the sample could indicate a headache or a vapor in the brain. It was a complex, almost mystical science. Asterisk historians still puzzle over its incredible longevity. How could a practice with no real scientific basis dominate medicine for over 1,000 years? The answer probably lies in its visual, intuitive appeal. It provided a tangible proof of the doctor's unseen knowledge. It took a hidden, internal problem and made it visible, readable, something that could be understood and, therefore, treated. It was a powerful piece of medical theater. Asterisk, after several minutes of silent, intense scrutiny, Dr. Albinus places the flask on his desk. He has assessed the color, the clarity, the consistency. He has a working theory about the young woman's humoral state. But there is one final test to perform. It is the most unusual, the most intimate, and, in this particular case, the most crucial. He looks at you, his expression serious. Now, he says quietly, for the final confirmation. He takes a deep breath, a quiet moment of preparation. This next step is not one he performs for every patient. Only when the other signs are ambiguous or point towards a specific, subtle imbalance. He picks up the matula again, holding it with a steady hand. The merchant's words echo in your mind, a persistent sweetness to her breath. This was the key, the symptom that has led the doctor to this final, decisive test. He unseals the top of the flask, a small cork stopper that comes away with a soft pop. The air in the study, already thick with the scent of old books and herbs, now gains a new, faint, and slightly acrid note. Asterisk, the doctor first wafts the air towards his nose, inhaling deeply, his eyes closed in concentration. He is assessing the aroma, another critical piece of the diagnostic puzzle. He murmurs a few words under his breath, Latin terms for different scents, fragrance, fetidus, but the smell, in this case, is not enough. It's too faint, too inconclusive. He needs more information, a more direct and undeniable piece of evidence. And there is only one way to get it. Asterisk, he extends a single, clean finger, his index finger, and dips it ever so slightly into the liquid in the flask. It is a tiny, delicate motion, almost reverent. He pulls his finger out, a single, glistening drop clinging to the tip. He looks at it for a moment, the pale yellow drop catching the morning light like a tiny, liquid jewel. You watch, a mixture of fascination and slight repulsion. You've seen him do this before. but it never loses its strange, almost shocking intimacy. Asterisk then, with a calm, clinical detachment that you have come to admire. He brings the finger to his lips and tastes the sample. Asterisk, his face remains impassive, but his eyes narrow for a fraction of a second. He is concentrating, analyzing the flavor profile with the same intensity a vintner would analyze a wine. Is it salty, bitter, sour, or is it, as he suspects, something else entirely? A moment passes, then another. He slowly lowers his hand and dabs his finger on the linen cloth you brought earlier. He looks at you, and a flicker of sad understanding crosses his face. Melitus asterisk, he says, the single Latin word hanging in the quiet air of the study. It means honey sweet. Asterisk, you now understand. The young woman's body is producing in excess of this sweet humor, while the ancient and Renaissance physicians didn't have a concept of blood sugar or insulin. They had recognized this specific symptom for over 1,000 years, as far back as ancient India and Greece. Physicians had documented cases of a wasting disease, characterized by excessive thirst and a urine that was sweet to the taste. Fact confirmed either by observing that it attracted ants, or by this more direct, if less appealing, method. It was a known and feared diagnosis. This taste test, as bizarre as it seems to us, was a genuine, widely accepted historical diagnostic technique. Asterisk. The doctor walks over to a basin of water in the corner and carefully washes his hands, the sound of splashing water filling the room. The sweetness confirms it, he says, his back's still to you. Her liver is failing to properly cook the humors. It is producing a cold, sweet phlegm that is overwhelming her system. It is what leaches the energy from her limbs and steals the warmth from her blood. Asterisk, this is where the genius and the tragedy of his medicine intersect. He has correctly identified a major symptom of what we would now call diabetes. He has, through his own strange methods, arrived at a correct observation. But his understanding of the cause is rooted in the ancient theory of the four humors. His diagnosis is a ghost of the truth, an accurate shadow cast by a flawed light. Asterisk, historians still debate the efficacy of such methods. While tasting urine is certainly not a reliable way to diagnose most illnesses, in this one specific case, it was surprisingly effective at identifying a key symptom of diabetes. It's a quirky and slightly unsettling reminder that even within a medical system that seems utterly alien, there are moments of startling, accidental accuracy. It makes you wonder how many other folk remedies, or strange diagnostic techniques, held a kernel of truth, lost to us now in the shadow of modern science. Asterisk, the doctor dries his hands and turns back to you. The diagnostic phase is over. His face is somber. The prognosis for this condition is not good. There is no cure, only management. He will prescribe a diet of warm and dry foods to counteract the cold and moist nature of the illness. Roasted meats, old wine, and bitter herbs. He will advise against fruits and sweet things, which would only add to the problem. It is, by pure coincidence, not entirely dissimilar from a modern dietary approach, though for entirely different reasons. Asterisk, right, he says, his voice now gentle but firm. Let us go and speak with the Father. We must be honest, but we must also offer hope. That apprentice is as much a part of the cure as any medicine. He gestures for you to open the door. You move to do so, your mind still reeling from the strange, anachronistic blend of observable fact and ancient theory you have just witnessed. The quiet, profound moment of the taste test lingers in your mind. It was a moment of pure Renaissance medicine, a little bit of science, a lot of tradition, and an unflinching willingness to do whatever it took to understand the mystery hidden inside the human body. Dr. Albinus delivers his diagnosis to the merchant and his daughter with a calm, measured gravity. He avoids the more visceral details of his final test, speaking instead in the elegant, metaphorical language of the humors. He explains the imbalance, the excess of cold, sweet phlegm, and outlines a strict regimen of diet and gentle exercise. There is a quiet sadness in the room, but also a sense of relief. The unknown terror now has a name, a shape, and a plan of action. Hope, as the doctor said, is a potent medicine in itself. After they depart, leaving a few silver coins on the small tabola, respectable fee for such a thorough consultation. The doctor turns to you. A difficult case, he says with a sigh. We can manage the symptoms, but the root is deep. Now, we have other duties. We must restock our own supplies. Fetch your cloak. We are going to the apothecary. The word itself feels magical, exotic. The apothecary is not just a shop. It's a gateway to another world. A place where the raw ingredients of nature are transformed into potent remedies. You grab your simple wool cloak from a peg by the door and follow the doctor down the narrow, winding stairs that lead to the street. Emerging from the dark interior of the house into the morning light is like stepping onto a stage. The city is now fully awake, a bustling, chaotic symphony of sound and smell. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke from countless chimneys, the savory aroma of baking bread from a shop down the lane, and the less pleasant, earthy smell of the central gutter that runs down the middle of the street. You walk on the raised cobblestones at the side of the road, carefully avoiding the murky stream of refuse. The streets are crowded. Merchants shout their wares from open stalls. Housewives haggle over the price of vegetables, and a group of children chase a stray dog, their laughter echoing off the timber-framed buildings that lean precariously over the narrow street. A man pushes a heavy cart laden with firewood, yelling, "Make way! Make way!" to the throng. It's a vibrant, living world, and you and the doctor are just two small figures moving through its currents. You follow in his wake, his dark robes parting the crowd like the bow of a ship. After a 10-minute walk through the labyrinthine streets, you arrive at your destination. The apothecary's shop is easy to spot. It's marked by a large, gilded sign in the shape of a mortar and pestle, the universal symbol of the trade. The shop front is impressive, with a large, glass-paned window, a true sign of prosperity, displaying a carefully arranged selection of polished jars and exotic-looking roots. You push open the heavy wooden door, and a small bell tinkles merrily above your head, announcing your arrival. The air inside is a revelation. If the doctor's study is a library of sense, the apothecary is a cathedral. The atmosphere is dense, almost intoxicating, with 1,000 competing aromas. There's the sweet, cloying smell of dried flowers like rose and chamomile, the sharp, medicinal tang of eucalyptus and camphor, the spicy warmth of cinnamon and clove, and the dark, earthy scent of dried roots and resins like myrrh and frankincense. It's overwhelming and wonderful all at once. The shop is a marvel of dark wood and gleaming glass. The walls are lined from floor to ceiling with hundreds of small drawers, each labeled with a small, elegant Latin inscription: Radix glycerizae, for licorice root; Flores lavandulae, for lavender flowers. Above the drawers are shelves filled with ceramic and glass jars of all shapes and sizes, containing powders, oils, and syrups in every imaginable color. Hanging from the rafters are huge bundles of dried herbs, casting long, fragrant shadows across the room. Behind a long wooden counter stands the apothecary himself, Master Valerius. He is a small, precise man, with a neat gray beard and a pair of spectacles perched on the end of his nose. He greets Dr. Albinus with a respectful bow. They are old colleagues, partners in the business of healing. The doctor hands him a small, folded piece of parchment. It is his list of required ingredients. Master Valerius reads it over, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Ah, the usual, doctor. And I see you need more thriac." He nods gravely, a wise precaution, with the summer fevers approaching. Theriac was the superstar of Renaissance remedies. It was a complex, jam-like concoction made from dozens of ingredients, sometimes over 60, including crushed viper flesh, opium, cinnamon, and a host of other exotic herbs and spices. It was considered a panacea, a universal antidote for poison, and a cure for nearly every disease known to man. It was fantastically expensive and highly sought after. Every apothecary had his own secret, closely guarded recipe, asterisk, as Master Valerius begins to gather the ingredients. You wander deeper into the shop, your eyes wide with curiosity. You see jars filled with substances that stretch the imagination. There's a box of dried toads, prescribed for ailments like dropsy. A large jar contains a fine, shimmering powder, labeled mumia. This was, quite literally, powdered Egyptian mummy. A ghoulish, but highly valued medicine believed to have powerful healing properties. It's a quirky and unsettling fact that for centuries, a key ingredient in European medicine was ground-up human remains, looted from ancient tombs. Asterisk, you also see beautiful, polished gemstones. The apothecary doesn't just sell herbs. He sells powdered pearls to clear the skin, crushed emeralds to stop bleeding, and sapphire dust to cure eye ailments. The line between medicine, alchemy, and magic is very, very thin in this room. Historians often struggle to categorize these practices. Was the use of powdered gems a purely superstitious act, or did it stem from a belief in the inherent properties and virtues of rare and beautiful objects? The answer, most likely, is that it was seen as a perfectly logical extension of the idea that nature provided cures in many forms, some more potent and expensive than others. Asterisk, Master Valerius works with the focus of a master chef. His movements quick and efficient. He uses a set of small brass scales to weigh out powders, a mortar and pestle to grind roots, and a small funnel to pour viscous liquids into bottles. He wraps each item in paper or places it in a small cloth bag. Finally, he presents the collection to Dr. Albin. The exchange of coin is discreet, a quiet clinking of silver. Asterisk, with your supplies gathered in a leather satchel. You and the doctor take your leave as you step back out into the noisy, chaotic street, the clean, complex scent of the apothecary shop still clinging to your clothes. You feel like you've just returned from a journey to a strange and secret world, a world where science is a kind of poetry and healing is a form of art. Back in the quiet sanctuary of the doctor's study, the afternoon light streams in through the high window, illuminating the swirling dust motes and golden shafts. You carefully unpack the treasures from the apothecary, arranging the small paper packets and corked vials on the great oak desk. The air is once again filled with the scent of potential cures. Dr. Albinus examines each item with a satisfied hum, his expert fingers testing the texture of a powdered root or holding a vial of dark liquid up to the light. Asterisk. But his work with the patient from this morning is not yet complete. The diet and the herbal remedies are just one part of the treatment. There is another, equally important force that must be considered, a force that governs the very rhythms of the body, the cosmos. Asterisk, the humors are influenced not just by what we consume, the doctor says, turning from the desk and walking towards a large, complex chart hanging on the wall, but by the heavens themselves. We are all connected to the celestial bodies, as above, so below. Asterisk, this is the world of medical astrology, a discipline considered just as essential as humoral theory. It was not a fringe belief, but a core part of university medical education. A respectable physician was expected to be as proficient with an astrolabe as with a lancet. The belief was that each sign of the zodiac governed a specific part of the body. Aries ruled the head, Taurus the neck, Gemini the arms, and so on, all the way down to Pisces, which governed the feet. This figure, the zodiac man, was a common illustration in medical texts, a slightly comical-looking human figure with signs and symbols pointing to all his various parts. Furthermore, each of the 7 known celestial bodies, the Sun, Moon, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn, was associated with one of the 4 humors and their properties. Mars, for instance, was hot and dry, associated with yellow bile. The Moon was cold and moist, linked to phlegm. Therefore, the position of these planets at the time of a person's birth, and at the onset of their illness, could have a profound effect on their health. To truly understand our young patient's condition, the doctor continues, we must understand her celestial makeup. I asked her father for her exact date and time of birth. He retrieves a scrap of parchment from his pocket, upon which are scribbled the vital details. Now, we must cast her astrological chart. He clears a space on the desk, pushing aside the books and the skull with a familiar ease. He lays out a large, fresh sheet of parchment, a pot of ink, a quill, and his most precious tools, a brass compass, a straight-edged ruler, and his gleaming astrolabe. The astrolabe was a beautiful, intricate device, a kind of ancient computer made of interlocking brass discs that could be used to determine the position of the stars and planets for any given time and location. His first task is to draw the chart itself, large square, divided by diagonal lines into 12 sections, or houses. Each house represents a different aspect of life, health, family, wealth, and so on. Then, using a set of complex astronomical tables from a thick book called an ephemeris, he begins the painstaking process of calculating the exact position of the Sun, Moon, and each of the planets at the moment of the young woman's birth. You watch, fascinated, as he works. His brow is furrowed in concentration, his lips moving silently as he performs the calculations. He dips his quill in the ink and begins to fill in the chart, drawing the symbols for the planets, a circle with a dot for the Sun, a crescent for the Moon, the familiar shield and spear for Mars into their correct houses and zodiac signs. It's a process that combines mathematics, astronomy, and a deep, intuitive understanding of symbolic meaning. Just as I suspected, he murmurs after a while. He points a slender finger at a specific point on the chart. Look here. Saturn was in the 6th house, the house of health, at the time of her birth, and it was in opposition to Venus. He explains the significance. Saturn was considered a malefic planet, cold and dry, associated with melancholy, chronic illness, and limitation. Venus, on the other hand, was benefic, warm and moist, associated with pleasure, sweetness, and the kidneys. Their opposition on her chart created a fundamental, lifelong constitutional weakness. It predisposed her to an imbalance of cold humors and a weakness in the organs that process fluids. This is a profoundly different way of thinking about disease. It suggests that some illnesses are not random occurrences but are written in the stars, a destiny imprinted upon a person at the moment they draw their first breath. Historians often wonder how patients reacted to this kind of diagnosis. Was it terrifying to be told your illness was fated, or was it, in a strange way, comforting to know that your suffering was not your fault, not a punishment for some unknown sin, but part of a grand, cosmic design could, perhaps, bring a sense of peace and acceptance. The doctor isn't finished. He now performs a second, even more complex calculation. He is determining the best possible time to administer the remedies he will prepare. This practice, known as electional astrology, was crucial. To give a medicine at the wrong time when the moon was in an unfavorable position, for instance, could render it ineffective or even harmful. A quirky but common rule was to never perform a bloodletting on a specific part of the body when the moon was in the zodiac sign that governed it. One must never, for example, bleed a patient from the arm when the moon is in Gemini. After another 10 minutes of careful calculation, he finds what he's looking for. Thursday morning, he announces with satisfaction. 2 hours after sunrise, Jupiter will be rising, and the moon will be in a favorable aspect. That is when she must begin her treatment. The heavens will be aligned to aid her recovery. Asterisk. He leans back in his chair, the complex, beautiful chart spread out before him. It is a celestial map of a human soul, a diagnosis written in the language of the stars. For him, there is no conflict between this mystical art and the practical science of uroscopy or the pharmacology of the apothecary. They are all simply different ways of reading the book of nature, of deciphering the hidden patterns that connect the human body to the world and the world to the cosmos. It's a holistic vision of medicine, one that sees the patient not as a collection of symptoms, but as a small universe, echoing the great universe above. The next morning, the sun has barely risen, casting long, cool shadows across the city, when the doctor announces your next task. The merchant's daughter is too weak to come to us, he says, carefully placing a selection of prepared remedies into a soft leather bag. And the stars are not yet aligned for her treatment to begin. But another patient requires our immediate attention, a guild master, suffering from a terrible ague. We must make a house call. Asterisk. A house call is always an adventure. It means leaving the predictable, controlled environment of the study and plunging into the unpredictable currents of the city streets. You pull on your cloak once more, feeling a familiar mix of excitement and apprehension. You are the doctor's bag carrier, his protector, and his silent observer. Asterisk. Stepping outside, you find the city in a different mood than yesterday. The morning rush has subsided, replaced by the steady, industrious hum of a city at work. The air is filled with the rhythmic asterisk clang, clang, clang asterisk of a blacksmith's hammer from a nearby forge. The worry sound of a spinner's wheel from an open doorway, and the distant, cheerful shouts of dock workers down by the river. The smells have changed too. The sweet scent of morning bread has been replaced by the sharp temps of sawdust from a carpenter's workshop and the rich, savory aroma of a cookshop roasting meat for the midday meal. Asterisk. You follow Dr. Albinus as he navigates the streets with an expert's confidence. He knows every narrow alley, every hidden shortcut. He seems to have a mental map of the entire city, a map marked not with street names, but with landmarks. The baker with the crooked chimney, the weaver with the bright blue door, the tavern that always has a sleeping dog on its porch. Asterisk. The journey takes you from the relatively quiet, respectable lane of the doctor's home into the more crowded, commercial heart of the city. Here, the streets are wider, paved with smoother, more evenly laid cobblestones to accommodate the heavy merchant carts. The buildings are taller, their upper stories jettied out over the street, almost touching the buildings opposite, creating a permanent twilight on the ground below. It's a canyon of timber, plaster, and slate. Asterisk. As you walk, the doctor points out small details you might have otherwise missed. See that house? He says, gesturing with his chin towards a home with a small, faded red cross painted on the door. The plague visited them last summer. We must say a prayer as we pass. A little further on, he points to a sprig of rosemary hanging over a doorway. A new baby was born there last week. Rosemary to ward off evil spirits and bring good fortune. The city, through his eyes, is not just a collection of buildings, but a living text filled with symbols of life, death, and the quiet hopes and fears of its inhabitants. Asterisk. You pass the great market square, the heart of the city. It's a whirlwind of color, sound, and motion. Stalls are piled high with produce, gleaming red apples, mountains of green cabbages, and baskets of earthy brown mushrooms. A fishmonger, his arms slick with scales, calls out the freshness of his catch, his voice a booming baritone. A woman sells live chickens, their clucking and squawking adding to the general din. This is the city's larder, its pharmacy, its social club. It's messy, loud, and bursting with life. Asterisk. It's here. You see one of the most curious and common sights of the city streets, the pigs. not wild boars, but domestic pigs, wandering freely, acting as a kind of four-legged sanitation department. They snuffle along the gutters, eating discarded food scraps and other refuse. It was a remarkably efficient, if not particularly hygienic, system of waste disposal. It's a quirky historical fact that many medieval and Renaissance cities relied on these semi-feral pigs to keep the streets clean. They were a public service with snouts. Asterisk the doctor, however, navigates the chaos with an air of serene detachment, his gaze fixed on his destination. He is a man with a purpose, an island of calm in the bustling sea of humanity. But even he is not immune to the occasional disruption. A stray dog darts out in front of him, and he has to stop short to avoid tripping. A cart loaded with barrels of wine is stuck in a narrow lane, and you have to backtrack and find another route. Each journey is a small odyssey, a series of minor challenges to be overcome. Asterisk historians often debate the sensory experience of a pre-industrial city. Was it an overwhelmingly foul and unpleasant place, as often depicted? Or did the lack of industrial pollution mean the air was, in some ways, cleaner? The truth is likely a complex mix. Without modern sewage systems, the smells could be overpowering, especially in the summer heat. But without the constant noise and chemical fumes of engines, the sounds and smells of nature, the scent of rain on dusty streets, the sound of birds in the churchyard trees would have been much more present. Asterisk finally, after nearly half an hour of walking, you arrive in a quieter, more affluent district. The houses here are larger, made of stone rather than timber, with well-tended gardens visible behind high walls. The streets are cleaner, the air fresher. This is where the wealthy guildmasters and merchants live, insulated from the worst of the city's clamor. Asterisk the doctor stops before a large, imposing oak door, adorned with a heavy iron knocker in the shape of a lion's head. This is the home of his patient. He pauses for a moment, composing himself. He smooths down his robes, adjusts the bag on his shoulder, and takes a deep breath. He is shifting from traveler to healer. You stand silently behind him, your own small journey through the bustling city streets at an end, ready for the next phase of the day's work to begin inside the quiet walls of the sick. The doctor raises the heavy iron knocker and lets it fall once. The sound is a deep, resonant thud that seems to be immediately absorbed by the thick oak of the door. There is no frantic rush from within. A few moments of silence pass before you hear the sound of a heavy bar being lifted and the scraping of a key in a large lock. The door swings inward, not with a creak, but with a smooth, wailed silence that speaks of wealth and good maintenance. Asterisk, a young serving woman, her face etched with worry, stands in the doorway. She is dressed in clean, simple livery. She curtsies deeply to Dr. Albina. "Thank you for coming so quickly, doctor," she whispers, her voice hushed, as if she were in a church. "The master is upstairs. He has had a very difficult night." Asterisk, she leads you through a dark, cool entryway into the main hall of the house. The difference from the world outside is immediate and profound. The noise of the city vanishes, replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. The air is still and smells faintly of beeswax, polish, and dried lavender. Your footsteps, which were just part of the general clatter on the cobblestones, now echo softly on the polished wooden floorboards. It feels as if you have passed through a veil into a different realm, a place where time has slowed down. Asterisk, the hall is grand, with a high-beamed ceiling and dark, wood-paneled walls. A large, ornate tapestry depicting a hunting scene hangs on one wall, its vibrant colors muted in the dim light. The furniture is sparse, but heavy and clearly expensive. A large, carved chest, a few high-backed chairs, and a long refectory table. Everything is clean, orderly, and untouched. It is a house holding its breath. Asterisk, the serving woman leads you up a wide, winding staircase. The steps are solid oak and do not creak. As you ascend, The light grows dimmer. The upper floor is a warren of quiet, shadowy corridors. You pass closed doors, behind which you can only imagine the private lives of the family are unfolding in hushed tones. The entire household seems to revolve around the sick room, a silent, invisible hub of anxiety. Finally. She stops before a door at the end of a long hallway and gives it a soft, tentative knock. A woman's voice from within murmurs, "Enter." The serving woman pushes the door open and steps aside, allowing you and the doctor to enter first. You find yourself in a large, spacious bedchamber. The air here is thick and warm, heavy with the scent of sickness, sweat, and the cloying aroma of various herbal infusions that have been left to steam by the bedside. Heavy velvet curtains are drawn across the large windows, plunging the room into a perpetual twilight, a common practice to encourage rest and keep out the bad airs of the street. In the center of the room is a massive four-poster bed, hung with yet more heavy curtains. It is a piece of furniture so large, it is practically a room within a room. Lying amongst a mountain of linen sheets and fur blankets is the patient, the guild master. He is a large man, but his illness has made him seem shrunken and frail. His face is pale and slick with sweat, his breathing shallow and rapid. He shivers uncontrollably, despite the warmth of the room and the weight of his blankets. This is the ague, the cyclical fever and chills that we would now identify as malaria. Sitting in a chair by the bedside is a woman, presumably the guildmaster's wife. Her back is ramrod straight, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her face is a mask of strained composure, but her eyes, wide and fearful, betray her inner turmoil. She rises as the doctor enters, her silk dress rustling in the quiet room. Dr. Albinus moves towards the bed with a slow, deliberate grace. His presence seems to immediately change the atmosphere in the room. He brings with him an aura of calm, professional authority. He doesn't speak at first. He simply stands by the bed, his head bowed slightly, observing the patient. This quiet observation is a critical part of his bedside manner. It shows respect for the patient's suffering and gives him time to assess the situation without overwhelming the anxious family with questions. He then turns to the wife and speaks in a low, soothing voice. He asks her about the night, about the rhythm of the fevers, about what the patient has eaten or drunk. His questions are gentle but precise. He is not just gathering medical information. He is building a relationship of trust with the family. He is reassuring them, with his calm demeanor, that the situation is under control. Finally, he turns his attention back to the patient. He gently pulls back the bed curtains to allow a little more light to fall on the man's face. He places the back of his hand on the guildmaster's forehead, a simple, human gesture to gauge the heat of the fever. A quirky detail of the time is that physicians rarely touched their patients in the way a modern doctor would. There was no stethoscope, no reflex hammer. The diagnosis was made through observation, conversation, and, of course, the examination of the simple act of touching the skin was an unusually intimate part of the examination. He then leans in close, listening to the man's breathing, observing the color of his tongue and the whites of his eyes. You stand silently by the door, holding the leather bag of remedies, a quiet apprentice in the theater of healing. You watch the doctor's every move, learning not just the science of medicine, but the art of compassion. Historians often debate the effectiveness of the Renaissance physician's bedside manner. Lacking effective cures for most serious illnesses, was their primary role simply to provide comfort and reassurance? To give the family a sense of agency in a situation that was largely out of their control? It is very likely that this psychological aspect of their work was just as important, if not more so, than the physical remedies they prescribed. In a world of fear and uncertainty, the calm, confident presence of a learned doctor was a powerful medicine in its own right. Asterisk after a few minutes of silent examination, Dr. Albinus straightens up. He has seen enough. He turns to the anxious wife. The fever is strong, he says, his voice even and steady, but his constitution is stronger. We will fight the heat with cooling remedies. He looks to you and nods, a signal to open the bag. The time for quiet observation is over. The time for action has begun. The doctor works with a quiet, focused efficiency. From the leather bag, you produce the remedies he prepared. There is a dark, bitter-smelling tincture in a glass vial, a poultice of mashed herbs wrapped in a clean linen cloth, and a small packet of a fine, pale powder. He explains each one to the guildmaster's wife, his voice a low, reassuring murmur. The tincture is made from willow bark, a well-known historical remedy for fever and pain, containing a natural chemical precursor to aspirin. The poultice is to be applied to the forehead to provide a cooling sensation, and the powder is a gentle sudorific, meant to induce a cleansing sweat to expel the excess heat of the fever. Asterisk as the wife moves to administer the first dose of the tincture, a second figure enters the sick room. It is another woman, younger than the guildmaster's wife, perhaps her daughter or a niece. She is pale and seems to move with a kind of weary listlessness that reminds you, for a moment, of the merchant's daughter from yesterday. She curtsies to the doctor and then goes to stand by the window, her back to the room, a silent, melancholic presence. Asterisk, the doctor watches her for a moment, his diagnostic mind never truly at rest. After he has given his final instructions for the guildmaster's care, he approaches the younger woman by the window. "Forgive my intrusion, madam," he says softly, "but I could not help but notice your weariness. Are you quite well?" Asterisk the woman turns, a faint sad smile on her lips. "It is nothing, doctor, just a woman's troubles, a heaviness in the heart, a certain floating sensation in the belly. It comes and goes as it pleases." Asterisk the guildmaster's wife overhears and lets out a weary sigh. "She has suffered from these spells for years, doctor. We have tried everything. The priests say it is a trial of her faith. The wise woman in the market gave her a tonic of mother. Nothing seems to touch it." Asterisk, Dr. Albinus nods slowly, his expression thoughtful. He has encountered these symptoms many times before in his female patients. The diagnosis in his mind is almost immediate. It is a classic case of what the ancient Greeks and 1,000 years of physicians after them had a very specific and very strange name for. Asterisk it sounds, the doctor says, choosing his words with care, like a disturbance of the womb. He then proceeds to explain one of the most peculiar and persistent ideas in the history of medicine, the theory of the wandering womb, asterisk the concept, which originated with ancient Greek physicians like Hippocrates, was that a woman's uterus was not a fixed organ. They believed it was a separate, almost independent creature living inside the body, a small animal within an animal. This free-roaming organ was thought to become distressed or lonely if a woman was unmarried or childless for too long. In its distress, it would dislodge itself and wander throughout the body, searching for moisture. If it traveled upwards, it could press against the lungs, heart, and brain, causing a wide array of symptoms: shortness of breath, anxiety, fainting spells, dizziness, and a feeling of suffocation. The ancient term for this condition was hysteria, from the Greek word hystera, meaning uterus. Asterisk, the doctor explains this to the women in a calm, academic tone, as if describing the migration of birds. The womb, he says, is a naturally dry and light organ. If it is not anchored by pregnancy, it can become parched and may travel upwards, putting pressure on the diaphragm and the heart. This is what causes the feeling of heaviness and the fluttering sensations. Asterisk, the proposed cures for this condition were just as strange as the diagnosis itself. The core principle was to lure the wandering womb back down to its proper place. This was a quirky and fascinating aspect of ancient and Renaissance gynecology. since the womb was believed to be attracted to pleasant smells and repelled by foul ones. The treatment was a two-pronged sensory assault. The physician would have the patient inhale foul-smelling substances like burnt feathers, sulfur, or acrid resins to drive the uterus downwards from the head and chest. Simultaneously, sweet-smelling perfumes and herbal infusions, like jasmine or rose water, would be applied to the lower part of her body to entice it back into position. Asterisk, we must apply a pleasant fumigation below. The doctor advises the guildmaster's wife, while a more pungent aroma is held to her nose. This should encourage the organ to return to its natural seat. Asterisk, you listen to this explanation, your modern sensibilities reeling slightly. The idea of a mobile sentient organ seems like something from a fantastical story, not a serious medical textbook. Yet, for thousands of years, this was the dominant scientific explanation for a wide range of women's health issues that were not otherwise understood. It was a way of explaining the complex interplay between the reproductive system and a woman's overall physical and emotional health. Asterisk, historians still debate the full cultural meaning of the wandering womb. Was it simply a bizarre medical error, born of a limited understanding of female anatomy? Or was it also a reflection of a society's deep-seated anxieties about female autonomy and the perceived mysteries of the female body? The theory medicalized a woman's emotional and physical distress, framing it not as a personal or spiritual failing, but as a tangible, physical ailment, albeit a very strange one. It gave doctors a problem to solve and a treatment to prescribe, which was, in its own way, a form of taking the woman's suffering seriously. Asterisk, the younger woman listens to the doctor's explanation with a kind of weary resignation. She has clearly heard many theories about her condition before. She neither accepts nor rejects his diagnosis, simply nodding along politely. Her ailment is a mystery, a shadow that lives inside her, and the doctor's theory is just one more name given to that shadow. Asterisk, Dr. Albinus, satisfied that he has offered a sound and logical solution, promises to send over the necessary aromatic herbs and resins from his own supply. His duty here is done. He has tended to the fevered body of the master of the house, and diagnosed the wandering soul, or rather, the womb of the younger woman. He gives a final reassuring nod to the family, gathers his things, and with you, in tow, makes his quiet exit, leaving the heavy, curtained sick room and its silent mysteries behind. The house call has taken up the entire morning. By the time you and Dr. Albinus step back out into the bright afternoon sun, the city is at the peak of its daily bustle. The air is warmer now, and the shadows are short. The doctor seems thoughtful on the walk back, his mind likely replaying the symptoms of the guildmaster and the melancholic young woman. He doesn't head directly home, however. He takes a turn down a street you don't often frequent, a street filled with young men in dark robes, all hurrying in the same direction. Asterisk, a change of pace. Apprentice, he says, a rare, almost mischievous twinkle in his eye. We have been practicing the art of medicine all morning. Now, let us go and observe the science, or, at least, what passes for it. Asterisk, you are heading towards the university, specifically, to the great lecture hall of the medical faculty. It is not a place you are officially permitted to enter. You are a humble apprentice, not a formally enrolled student but doctor. Albinus has an old friend on the faculty, who turns a blind eye to his occasional visits. You are to be a quiet observer, a ghost in the back of the hall. Asterisk, the university building is one of the oldest and most imposing in the city. It is a formidable structure of gray stone, its walls thick and its windows tall and narrow, like the arrow slits in a fortress. It radiates an aura of ancient, unassailable authority. You slip in through a small, arched side door, following the doctor down a long, cool, echoing stone corridor. The air here smells of cold, stone, dust, and something else that dry. Faint scent of scholastic sweat. Asterisk, you arrive at the entrance to the lecture hall. It is a vast, cavernous room with a high, vaulted ceiling. The layout is tiered, with rows of simple, backless wooden benches rising steeply from a central floor, like a classical amphitheater. The room is already packed with students, perhaps 100 of them, all young men, crowded together on the benches. They are a restless, murmuring sea of dark wool robes and serious faces. The air is thick with the sounds of shuffling feet, quiet coughs, and the scratching of quills on parchment as students prepare to take notes. Asterisk, at the very bottom of the tiered hall is a small, raised wooden stage. On the stage are two pieces of furniture, a tall, ornate lectern, and a high-backed, throne-like chair. This is the sacred space of the lecturer. Asterisk, a hush falls over the room as a distinguished, elderly man with a long white beard and the heavy, brocaded robes of a senior professor enters and takes his seat in the great chair. This is the lector. Beside the lectern stands another man, younger, with a clear, strong voice. He is the ostensor, the reader. The lecture is about to begin. Asterisk, you and Dr. Albinus find a small, unoccupied space on the very top bench, partially hidden behind a thick stone pillar. From here, you have a perfect view of the entire scene. The doctor leans in and whispers, "Today's lecture is on the circulatory system. Pay close attention. This is the foundation." Asterisk, what follows is one of the most curious and enduring traditions of medieval and Renaissance medical education. The professor, the great lector, does not actually lecture in the modern sense. He does not speak at all. His role is to be the silent, authoritative presence, the embodiment of medical wisdom. The actual lecturing is done by the ostensor, who reads aloud, in a loud, clear, monotonous Latin, directly from a sacred text. And in this case, the text is not a recent discovery or a contemporary textbook. It is a work by Galen of Pergamon, a Greek physician who has been dead for over 1300 years. Asterisk, you listen as the reader's voice drones on, filling the cavernous hall. He is describing the movement of the blood through the body according to Galen's model. It's a beautifully complex, but entirely incorrect, theory. Galen believed that blood was created in the liver from the food we eat. From there, some of it traveled to the right side of the heart, while the rest was distributed to the body through the veins, where it was consumed by the organs as nourishment. He theorized that a small amount of this venous blood seeped from the right side of the heart to the left through invisible pores in the septum, the wall separating the two chambers. In the left heart, this blood mixed with pneuma, or life-giving air, from the lungs, creating a vital spirit that was then pumped out to the body through the arteries. Asterisk, there was no concept of circulation in this model. The blood did not loop. It was a one-way trip, a system of continuous production and consumption, like fuel being fed to a fire. It's a startlingly wrong idea, but it was accepted as irrefutable dogma for well over a millennium. A quirky, but true historical fact is that any physician or anatomist who dared to question Galen's teachings was often ostracized, accused of heresy against the very foundations of medicine. His authority was absolute. Asterisk, as the reading continues, you look around at the students. Some are diligently taking notes, their faces masks of intense concentration. Others are visibly struggling to stay awake, their heads nodding. A few in the back are passing a whispered joke back and forth. It is, you realize, not so different from any classroom, in any era. Asterisk, but there is one thing conspicuously absent from this medical lecture. A body. There is no anatomical dissection taking place, no persection, no visual aids beyond a simple chart the professor occasionally points to. This lecture is a purely theoretical, text-based exercise. While human dissections did occur in this era, they were rare, highly ritualized events, often performed only once or twice a year. The purpose of these rare dissections was not to discover new information, but to demonstrate the truth of what was already written in Galen's ancient texts. If the body on the table appeared to contradict the book, it was assumed that the body was not that the book was wrong. Asterisk, historians still debate why this absolute adherence to ancient authority persisted for so long. Was it a lack of scientific curiosity, or a deep-seated cultural respect for classical wisdom? Perhaps it was a combination of both. In a world that felt chaotic and uncertain, the unchanging, authoritative voice of the ancient masters provided a comforting sense of stability and order. Questioning Galen was like questioning the sun's journey across the sky. It was a truth so fundamental, it was beyond dispute. Asterisk, after an hour, the reading concludes. The professor gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod, rises from his chair, and sweeps out of the hall. The students begin to gather their things, their chatter filling the room once more. The spell is broken. You and the doctor slip out the way you came, back into the stone corridor and out into the afternoon sun. Your heads filled with the echoes of 1,300-year-old words. Leaving the hallowed, dusty halls of the university, you feel as though you are emerging from a deep, ancient cave into the bright, messy reality of the present. The doctor is quiet, a thoughtful frown creasing his brow. Perhaps the lecture left him feeling, as it did you, that medicine can sometimes be a conversation with ghosts. Instead of taking the direct route home, he leads you back towards the sprawling market square, which is still thrumming with the energy of late afternoon commerce. Asterisk, there is more than one kind of healing in this city, he says, his voice low. The university teaches the medicine of the learned, the medicine of Latin and Greek texts, but the people have their own physicians. We would do well to remember that. Asterisk, he guides you towards a less crowded corner of the square, away from the loud shouts of the butchers and fishmongers. Here, the atmosphere is quieter, more fragrant. This is the herb sellers section. Stalls are piled high with bundles of fresh and dried plants. Bright yellow chamomile flowers, silvery green sage leaves, pungent bunches of rosemary, and the delicate, lace-like fronds of yarrow. The air is sweet and clean, a welcome respite from the more aggressive smells of the rest of the market. Asterisk, at a small, unassuming stall at the very end of the row, an old woman sits on a low wooden stool. She is weathered and wrinkled, her face a roadmap of a long and difficult life, but her eyes are sharp and intelligent. Before her is a simple wooden table, laid out not with raw herbs, but with small, handmade ceramic pots of salves, little cloth bags of poultices, and a few corked bottles of dark, homemade tinctures. This is a folk healer, a wise woman, a practitioner of a tradition of medicine as old, if not older, than the one taught at the university. Asterisk, she is tending to a customer, a young mother with a crying baby strapped to her chest. The mother is explaining that the baby has a terrible, scaly rash on its skin. The wise woman listens with a deep, patient empathy. The same kind of focused attention Dr. Albinus gives his own patients. She doesn't ask about the four humors or the position of the stars. She asks practical questions. What has the baby eaten? Is the rash worse in the morning or the evening? Does it seem to itch? Asterisk, after listening intently, she nods. She picks up one of the small ceramic pots. Chickweed and plantain, she says, her voice raspy but kind. Crushed fresh this morning. It will cool the skin and draw out the itch. Apply it 3 times a day. And brew a tea from these nettle leaves for yourself, she adds, handing the mother a small cloth bag. It will purify your milk. The mother thanks her profusely, handing over a couple of small copper coins. The exchange is simple, direct, and rooted in a deep, shared understanding of the local landscape and its botanical treasures. Asterisk, you and the doctor stand at a respectful distance. Observing this quiet interaction, Dr. Albinus does not look upon her with contempt or derision, as some of his university-educated colleagues might. He watches with a kind of professional curiosity, a recognition of a different, but not necessarily lesser, form of knowledge. These folk healers, who were almost always women, represented a vital part of the healthcare system. For the vast majority of the population who could not afford a university-trained physician, they were the first, and often only, source of medical care. Their knowledge was not learned from ancient Latin texts, but was passed down through generations, a practical, empirical wisdom based on centuries of trial and error. They knew the properties of the local plants, which leaves soothed a burn, which roots eased a stomach ache, which flowers helped a person sleep. A quirky but important aspect of their practice was its holistic nature. They often treated not just the body, but the spirit as well. Their remedies might be accompanied by a prayer, a charm, or a specific ritual to be performed. They understood that illness was not just a physical event, but an emotional and spiritual one, too. For instance, they might recommend sewing a sprig of St. John's wort into a child's clothing to ward off nightmares, blending physical herbalism with a belief in protective magic. Of course. This blending of medicine and magic often put them in a precarious position. The line between a respected healer and a suspected witch was dangerously thin. A remedy that worked could be seen as a gift from God. One that failed, or was administered to a person who later died, could be interpreted as malevolent witchcraft. Their position in the community was a complex mix of respect, reliance, and suspicion. Historians still work to uncover the true nature of this folk medicine, as it was rarely written down. It was an oral tradition, passed from mother to daughter, from mentor to apprentice. Reconstructing it is a kind of historical archaeology, piecing together clues from old herbals, court records from witch trials, and the lingering remnants of these traditions in modern herbalism. It's a history that is largely female, rural, and undocumented, a quiet counter-narrative to the loud, male, text-based history of academic medicine. The wise woman at the stall looks up, and her eyes meet the doctor's. There is a moment of silent acknowledgement between them. They are, in a sense, rivals, competing for the trust and the coin of the city's sick. But they are also colleagues, fellow travelers, in the great, mysterious landscape of human suffering. They inhabit different worlds, his, a world of Latin, astrology, and humoral theory, hers a world of local plants, ancestral knowledge, and quiet ritual, but their goal is ultimately the same: to offer comfort, to ease pain, to bring a small measure of order to the chaos of illness. The doctor gives her a slight, respectful nod, which she returns. Then he turns and leads you away, back into the flow of the market. He doesn't say anything for a long time. The encounter seems to have left him, like you, in a state of quiet contemplation. The day has shown you the three great pillars of Renaissance medicine: the physician's private art, the university's ancient science, and the people's timeless wisdom. And you are beginning to understand that the truth of healing might not live in just one of them, but somewhere in the quiet, mysterious space between all three. As you finally make your way back to the doctor's house, the sun is beginning its slow descent, painting the western sky in soft hues of orange and pink. The relentless energy of the city is starting to fade. The market vendors are packing up their stalls. The blacksmith's hammer has fallen silent, and the streets are becoming quieter, populated now by people heading home rather than to work. The day is letting out a long, collective sigh. You re-enter the house and climb the familiar stairs to the study. The room is just as you left it, but the light has changed. The golden afternoon sun now streams through the single high window, illuminating the room in a warm, honeyed glow. The dust motes you saw dancing in the gray morning light are now a swirling, glittering river of gold. The stacks of books, the bundles of herbs, the brass astrolabe on the desk, everything seems softer, calmer, bathed in the gentle light of the setting sun. Your first task of the evening is always the same. You light the candles. You take a long taper from a holder by the hearth, Light it from the glowing embers of the fire you built what feels like a lifetime ago, and move around the room, touching the flame to the wicks of the thick beeswax candles on the doctor's desk, and the tallow candles and sconces on the walls. One by one, they sputter to life, their small, flickering flames pushing back the encroaching shadows of twilight. The room fills with the soft, warm light and the faint, sweet scent of melting beeswax. Asterisk, while you are busy with the lights. Dr. Albinus sinks into his large, worn leather chair behind the desk. He lets out a deep sigh, a sound of profound weariness. The day has been long, filled with the anxieties of his patients and the weight of his responsibilities. He sits for a long moment in silence, his eyes closed, simply breathing in the familiar, comforting air of his sanctuary. Asterisk, your evening duties are a quiet, familiar ritual. You take the matula from the morning's consultation, empty its contents into the gutter outside the back door, and wash it carefully with water from the rain barrel, drying it with a clean linen cloth until it shines. You then return it to its place in the tall cabinet, ready for the next patient. Asterisk, next, you tidy the desk. It's a delicate operation, more of an archaeological survey than a simple cleaning. You don't dare move the doctor's most important books, or his astrological charts, but you gather the stray scraps of parchment, wipe up a small, forgotten ink blot, and arrange his quill pens neatly in their ceramic pot. You collect the remnants of his simple midday meal, a crust of bread and a piece of cheese, and sweep the crumbs from the floor. It is a slow, methodical process, a way of restoring order after the intellectual and emotional chaos of the day. Asterisk, as you work, the sounds of the city outside continue to soften. The resonant toll of the Vespers bell from the cathedral rolls across the rooftops, calling the faithful to evening prayer. You hear the distant sound of a mother calling her children in for the night, her voice soft and carrying on the still air. A lone dog barks, and is answered by another, a brief, conversational exchange in the growing dusk. The world is settling down, tucking itself in for the night. Asterisk, the doctor, roused from his brief rest, has opened the large leather-bound diary on his desk. This is where he records his cases. By the flickering candlelight, you watch him dip his quill into the ink pot and begin to write. His script is elegant and fluid, the quill making a soft, rhythmic scratching sound on the parchment. It is the only sound in the room, apart from the gentle crackle of the fire and the whisper of your own movements. He is not just recording symptoms and treatments. He is telling a story. He writes about the merchant's daughter, detailing the uroscopy, the taste test, and the astrological configurations that govern her health. He writes about the guild master, his ague, the willow bark tincture, and he writes about the young woman with the wandering womb, noting his prescription of aromatic fumigations. Asterisk, this diary is his legacy, his contribution to the great, ongoing conversation of medicine. Historians treasure such documents. They are not just records of medical practice, they are intimate glimpses into the mindset of a bygone era. They reveal how a physician thought, what he feared, what he hoped for. They are full of the quirky details and strange beliefs that bring the past to life. Did the doctor ever record his doubts or his failures in this book? Or was it a carefully curated account of his successes, a testament to his own skill for posterity? That is a question you, his apprentice, are not privy to. Asterisk, after he has finished writing, he doesn't close the book. He sits and reads over his notes from previous weeks, his brow furrowed in thought, perhaps looking for patterns, for connections he might have missed. The candlelight catches the silver in his hair, making him look like a weary but wise old wizard, poring over his book of spells. Asterisk, your final task is to prepare the herbs for the morning. You take down a few bundles from the rafters, chamomile, mint, and lemon balm, and carry them to a small workbench in the corner. You sit on a low stool and begin the slow, meditative work of stripping the dried leaves and flowers from the stems. your fingers moving with a practiced rhythm. The gentle, repetitive motion is calming, and the air around you fills with the soothing, fragrant dust of the herbs. It is the perfect, quiet end to a long and eventful day, a moment of peaceful, productive silence as the last of the light fades from the sky and the city outside sinks into a deep and profound slumber. Your work is done, the study is tidy, the candles are lit, and a small pile of fragrant, prepared herbs sits ready for the morning. You stand quietly by the workbench, waiting to be dismissed. The house is silent now, wrapped in the deep quiet of the night. But Dr. Albinus is not yet ready for sleep. His day of healing is not quite over. There is one final patient to whom he must attend, himself. Asterisk, he rises from his chair, stretching his back with a soft groan. He walks over to the fireplace, not to warm himself, but to retrieve a small iron pot hanging from a hook inside the hearth, where it has been kept gently warm by the embers all day. Inside is a thick, dark, syrupy liquid. It is his nightly tonic, a preventative medicine he takes without fail. Asterisk, he pours a small amount of the viscous fluid into a silver cup. The smell is potent, a complex mix of bitter herbs and sweet spices. You recognize the sharp scent of wormwood, the licorice aroma of anise, and the warm notes of cinnamon. This is his personal theriac, a less complex version of the expensive concoction from the apothecary, but one he trusts implicitly. He believes it helps to balance his own humors, keeping his melancholic tendencies in check and warding off the noxious miasmas he encounters daily in his work. He holds the cup in both hands for a moment, as if in a silent toast to his own health, and then drinks it down in one quick, practiced gulp, his face wrinkling slightly at the bitter taste. Asterisk, this is the first of his evening rituals. Next, he turns his attention to his feet. He sits in a chair by the fire and removes his soft leather shoes and his woolen hose. He then takes a small ceramic bowl filled with a pungent, greasy-looking salve. This is another of his own creations, a mixture of goose, fat, comfrey, and marjoram. He begins to massage the salve into the soles of his feet, his movements slow and methodical. Asterisk, this practice might seem odd, but it is rooted in humoral theory. The feet were considered a key site for the expulsion of excess humors from the body. Aches and pains in the joints, for instance, were often thought to be caused by a buildup of cold. Wet humors like phlegm settling in the extremities. The doctor's foot rub is not just for comfort, it is a therapeutic act. The warming properties of the marjoram, he believes, help to gently cook and dissolve these unhealthy humors, preventing them from causing mischief. It is a quirky, personal piece of preventative medicine, a way of keeping his own internal garden well-tended. Asterisk, as he massages his feet, he looks into the fire, his expression distant and thoughtful. You wonder what he is thinking about. Is he reviewing the day's cases, worrying about the guildmaster's fever or the merchant's daughter's sweetness? Or is he contemplating the larger mysteries of his profession, the vastness of what is not yet known? Perhaps he is simply tired, a man at the end of a long day, finding solace in a simple, familiar ritual. Asterisk, once he has finished with his feet, he moves on to the final, and most peculiar, part of his nightly regimen. He walks over to his desk and picks up a small, polished wooden box. He opens it to reveal a collection of small, smooth, gray stones. These are his sleeping stones. Asterisk, he selects one, a flat, oval stone that fits perfectly in the palm of his hand. He then lies down on a simple daybed in the corner of the study, a piece of furniture he often uses for short rests or when he is studying late into the night. He places the stone directly on his forehead, between his eyebrows. He closes his eyes and lies perfectly still, his breathing slow and even. Asterisk, this is a practice that borders on the mystical. The belief in the therapeutic properties of stones and gems was common, as you saw in the apothecary shop. Different stones were thought to have different virtues, or energies. Hematite was believed to stop bleeding, lapis lazuli to ward off melancholy, the doctor's sleeping stone, likely a piece of smooth river jasper or agate, was chosen for its cooling and calming properties. According to the doctrine of sympathies, the cold, solid, unchanging nature of the stone was thought to be transferable. By placing it on his forehead, he believed he was drawing the heat of his active mind, the anxieties and intellectual fervor of the day down into the cool, quiet stone, thereby calming his thoughts and preparing his mind for a restful sleep. Asterisk. Historians find these kinds of personal rituals fascinating. They exist in the gray area between formal medicine, folk belief, and individual habit. They show how the grand theories of medicine were adapted and personalized, woven into the fabric of daily life. The doctor's nightly routine is a perfect summary of his entire worldview. He uses a complex herbal tonic based on classical pharmacology, a physical therapy based on humoral theory, and a sympathetic magic based on the hidden virtues of nature. For him, these are not contradictory practices. They are all part of the same unified, holistic approach to maintaining the delicate balance of body, mind, and spirit. Asterisk. You watch him for a few minutes as he lies there, the stone, a dark shape on his pale forehead in the flickering candlelight. His breathing deepens, and the lines of worry on his face seem to soften. The ritual, whether through physical or psychological means, appears to be working. Asterisk. Seeing that he has settled, you know it is time for you to retire. You give a soft, almost inaudible cough to announce your departure. He doesn't open his eyes, but he gives a slight wave of his hand, a gesture of dismissal and good night. You turn and slip out of the study, pulling the heavy oak door closed behind you with a soft click. You leave him to his quiet communion with his books, his fire, and his curious, personal magic. A Renaissance physician tending to the last and most important patient of his long day.